All right, welcome back to the Unofficial Guide to vMix online course. In this video, we're going to go over the course and an introduction to the course. Let's do it. So I've got my handy little whiteboard over here. What is vMix? It's a live streaming software. That's the very first chapter of the book. You can get the download of the book below. Now, when we're getting started, we're going to go over the interface, just to familiarize you with the software. If you're just getting started, you might, if you're a professional or if you've used this in the past, you'll probably still find a few new pieces of the interface. We'll talk about adding inputs, and inputs are all of the different types of media that vMix can use in the setup. Then we'll talk about mixing inputs together and using the multi-view feature that allows you to mix, preview screens together. Then we will talk about working with titles. And titles are a great way to show lower thirds and different information, countdown clocks, scoreboards, things of that nature. Then we'll talk about audio. Everyone knows audio is so important. We split up audio into the main audio mixer and how all of that works. But then we'll go into the advanced VST3 plugins. So we're going a little advanced, but don't worry, we get back to the basics pretty quickly, but we got to nail down that audio first. Now in the basics, we're going to go over vMix settings. There's a lot of settings, and that's really where you can pop the hood open and learn how all of the vMix settings work. Then once we go over the settings, we'll go over full screen and multi-view. Full screen feature of vMix allows you to output video from vMix into a secondary screen or many other different configurations, including a multi-view. Now there's two different multi-views, and you'll learn about them. One is a multi-view that really puts one vMix input into multiple views, multiple inputs into one. And then this multi-view, the full screen multi-view, allows you to view a bunch of different inputs in a full screen, so you can kind of see what's going on in your vMix production at a glance. Now after that, we're going to go over recording video and streaming video. Of course, the two big ones, but we got to do some legwork before we get to that. And then we'll talk about overlay channels. And overlay channels are a very popular way to overlay channels of video on top of your base production. Then we'll get into vMix Social, which is the tool that will allow you to update comments from social media, from Facebook, from Twitch, from YouTube, Twitter. You can bring those comments in and populate your titles with the latest information from social media. Then when we get into the advanced area, we're going to talk about shortcuts, an amazing way to kind of increase your video production workflow and optimize what you're up to. We'll look at the GT title editor. The GT title editor is how you can make your own custom animated titles. Then we will go to vMix Call. vMix Call is the application that you can use to bring in remote guests, kind of like Zoom, but gives you a little bit more flexibility and control. Then we'll talk about the web controller. The web controller is a complete controller for vMix that allows you to remotely control vMix from any computer with an internet connection. Very powerful, awesome tool there. When we get into the deep dive, we're going to look at color correction. So we'll look at color correction tools. That allows you to color match multiple cameras and really use those awesome tools there. We'll look at virtual sets. I'm running out of space here. There's a lot in this course. Virtual sets. Then we'll take a look at PTZ cameras, PTZ camera control. In fact, there's a PTZ camera cutting off my view here a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to talk about NDI sources. Those are IP video sources that allow you to connect multiple vMix systems together, NDI cameras, and a whole IP workflow of solutions that are available. We'll talk about the external output. The external output, I'm going to have to erase some of these because we're getting so deep here. We've gotten all the way to the deep dive at this point. Then we're going to use the external output, which is basically like a virtual camera that you can bring into Zoom and other applications, but You can also use it to pump video into multiple different recording and output scenarios. Then we're going to look at playlists. Playlists are basically a list of inputs that you can bring together and have automatically loop. And it's an interesting tool that you can use in a lot of different ways. We'll look at data sources, and data sources are an awesome way to bring in data from the internet, whether it's an XML file or an RSS feed, bring it into vMix and then populate your sources with information from around the world. Then finally, when we get into the final mastering of vMix, we have 3 topics left. The first is instant replay. Next, we have how to use triggers. And then finally, we get into the API, and that will be how to actually build your own custom programs to control vMix. Okay, that's it. Get the book below, because that's going to be your guide that you can read and follow up on throughout this course. Let's get into it with our first basics video.